Hi, and welcome to session 3 of the grade 6 course. So we're going to start off with our recap as always. So the first 3 questions, I'd like you to factorize and solve. And then the other 2 are to sketch, so factorize and sketch. So using the skills that we've seen in sessions 1 and 2. Remember, it's not a test, so if you feel you need to look anything up, then please do. And then hit play when you are ready to see the answers. Okay, so there's the answers. Now the yellow highlighted is a little bit different. So if you've got those answers right, you worked out what you needed to do. So absolutely brilliant, well done. And you will be able to just sort of forward on to the next part of this session. If you didn't get that right, or you were a little bit confused and weren't sure how to do it, then I'm going to talk through that one now, just to make sure that we are secure when things are looking a little bit different. So this is an absolute classic. This is what the examiner is going to do to test your confidence in this topic. So our topic is quadratics. We are solving them. And one of the things that we have to be really confident about is understanding we can only apply our methods when our quadratic equals 0. So he can just do one little thing, like put some extra additional algebra this side, and you've got to spot that. You've got to know that doesn't equal 0, which means I can't start factorizing. I can't start doing anything until it does. So let's have a quick look and see this being done from scratch. So the question was as follows. So what I need to do is I need to move the 4x and the minus 4 to the other side. Once they've gone over to the other side and joined the quadratic that's there at the moment, that will leave me nothing. It'll leave it equaling 0. Which is obviously what we want. Now the 4x is going to land as minus 4x, so it's going to have an impact on that middle term. And my minus 5 is going to land as a plus 5, so it's going to have an impact on my last term, on my numbers. So I've got x squared minus 10x minus 4x is minus 14x, and 40 plus 5 is 45. That is my new quadratic equaling 0. So now I can start applying my method. So I'm going to factorize x, neg pos, so it's going to be neg. I've got 45, which is going to be 9 times 5. I can just chuck it in because they're both negative. I don't need to think too hard about that. And then I just finish it off. I want x to equal 9 for the first bracket to be 0. I want x to equal 5 for the second bracket to equal 0. So that's where those results came from, okay? All right, let us keep going. So we have some grounding now. We have some knowledge on our quadratic equations. So let's write a question out. Let's write out solve 2x squared plus 9x plus 2 equals 0. Okay, so when I see that, I can see it's a quadratic. I can see it equals 0. They want me to solve it. My skill is factorizing, so that's what I'm going to do. I can see that there is a value here in front of the x, which means I am going to be doing the kind of harder factorizing. So I'm going to drop my 2x and my 2x. My signs are pos. I'm going to multiply 2 times 2, which is 4. 1 and 4 and 2 and 2 make 4. But neither of these pairings are going to help me get a 9. Absolutely no way. The most I can get is a 5 with this one here. So factorizing this quadratic is simply not going to be, it's not going to be an option. It's just not going to work. I can't do it. So this is our first lesson. Factorizing is great. It's an efficient method, but it's not foolproof. It will not work every single time. It really only works when I am working with integers and when my solutions at worst case go into a fraction. Okay, so this is not the approach that I'm going to be able to take. And that is why we have something called the quadratic formula. So that when factorizing doesn't work, I have another option up my sleeve. Now, this is what the quadratic formula looks like. So it's minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's a pretty big formula. It's also one that you have to commit to memory. They do not give this to you on a formula sheet in your GCSE. So this needs to be committed to memory. So I think when you are practicing these questions at the end of the session, my advice to you would be write the formula out first and then do your maths. Write the formula out and then do your maths. The more often you write this down, the more likely it's going to get stuck, and it will be a formula that you can recall without too much problem. But that is going to be our formula. I'm going to let it sit there for us to check in with as we do our examples. You can see from the formula that there are three letters in it. You've got A, B, and C. And we mentioned this A, B, C when we were talking about when a quadratic's A doesn't equal 1. So we've kind of alluded to this already. So for this particular question, my A is equal to 2. My B is 9. It's a positive 9. I can see the plus sign in front of it. And my C is 2. Now I'm going to put those numbers where the letters are very, very carefully, because everything's positive. It makes this feel fairly straightforward. But once the negatives start coming, you can start getting negatives all over the place, and it can start then to get a little more confusing. So just take your time doing it literally step by step for every question, and you are less likely to make any errors along the way. So in my formula, the very first thing I've got is a minus. So I am going to write minus. The B is 9. I've then got plus or minus. I then start my square root. I've got b squared. That's going to become 9 squared minus 4 times whatever a is, which is 2, times whatever c is, which is 2. And I'll just extend that. And then underneath, I've got 2 times a is 2, so I've got 2 times 2. So what I've done is literally replaced all those letters with the numbers from my quadratic. Now, my first stage of tidying, I do the same every single time so that you get into kind of like a rhythm of how to use this formula. So just do this every single time. I'm going to tidy up everything that's in that root, and I'm going to tidy up my denominator. Okay, now it is calculator, so make sure that you've got your calculator handy. If you haven't, then pause, go and get it, bring it back, because we want to be doing this together. Okay, so we're going to be using our calculators to solve this. So let's now tidy up where we're at the moment. Okay, so I am going to have minus 9 plus or minus. I'm going to work that out in my calculator, which is going to give me 65 all over 2 times 2, which is 4. Now, don't panic if once you press equals, your calculator has a slightly different looking kind of a root form. That will be because it will simplify. It will go through a process of simplification, which will result possibly in a different display to the one that you've typed in. Now, remember, I'm trying to get as many marks as I possibly can. Actually, let me just make this a bit smaller so that we can still see the formula all the way through. Let me just pop that up the page a little bit. So at this stage, I like to see or deal with, let's say, the plus and the minus. The plus and the minus actually produces me 2 results. I've got minus 9 plus root 65 all over 4. And I've got minus 9 minus root 65 all over 4. So that actually produces me the two values that I would expect to get from a quadratic. So that's quite nice. When I put this into the calculator, as I say, when I press equals on this, it may well tidy it up or it may well look exactly the same. As long as you've typed it in very, very carefully, you should be getting, for our first value of x, minus 0.23. And for our second value of x, you should be getting minus 4.27. If you are, then you're entering it into the calculator correctly. If you're not, then it is something with the way that you're typing it in. So I'll give you two top tips in order to correct that if it's going wrong for you, okay? The first one would be just to use the fraction key on the calculator. So on the calculator, most calculators have a fraction key that looks something like that. If you hit that first, then you can enter the numerator in the top box, you can enter the denominator in the bottom box, hit your equals, it's not going to go wrong. So that's one way of getting around it if you are not getting the same answers as me. The other way to do it, which actually is the way I do it, I don't tend to use the fraction key. I tend to put the numerator into my calculator first, then I hit equals. So I get that answer on my display. Once I've hit my equals, I then press divide 4 and I press equals again. So that would be the way I personally do it, but it really doesn't matter. You need to do it in the way that makes you feel confident you're going to get the right answer out. So those are my tips on getting it working in the calculator for you. And that is using the quadratic formula. So it's a lot of work and it can get a bit muddly, if that's even a word, when those negatives are coming in. We'll do that after we've had a go at another one where they're all positive. So let's clean this up all the way to the top. And we're going to do, what should we do next? We're going to do x squared plus 6x plus 3 equaling 0 for us already. So that's perfect. We're ready to use the quadratic formula. Now, I know you've only seen it once, but I really want you to hit that pause and play around with it. Identify your A, your B, and your C. See how far you can go, and hit play when you're ready, and I will literally be talking through it. Okay, so A is equal to 1, B is equal to 6, and C is equal to 3. So putting it in step by step, minus B, so minus 6, plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times my A, which is 1, times my C, which is 3, all over 2 times A, which is 1. Now I'm going to use my calculator to work out what's in that root. So I've got minus 6 plus or minus root 24 all over 2. Okay. If your root isn't coming out well, then again, break it up even more. Do your 6x squared and get 36. Then write your takeaway. Then do your 4 times 1 times 3. And then you'll see whether or not this turns into an add, which it can do when we've got more negatives going on. Okay. Split this now into its two possible solutions, or minus 6 minus root 24 over 2. So those are the solutions in the exact form. Okay, let's just get it so you can see it really well. Yeah, those are the exact numbers. The minute I hit my S to D and I cut it off, all right, I'm only cutting a very small amount away, but I am still changing the number, and it's not exact anymore. So whilst it's in this form where there's a root within the answer, I am in a perfect value. I've got an exact value. Once I STD it, then obviously I will be changing it slightly. The reason that I would give it as a decimal is because the exam might be asking me to give my answer to 2 decimal places or 3 significant figures. That's also a really good trigger that it's not going to factorize. Solve this equation, giving your answer in 2 decimal places. We forget factorizing then. Okay, that should automatically have your brain thinking formula will work for this one. So let's put that in the calculator. And we are going to get for -6 plus root 2, 24. We are going to get minus 0.55 to 2 decimal places. So x is equal to that, or x can equal minus 5.45 for when it's -6 minus root 24 divided by 2. Okay. As I say, don't panic if your root changes the way it looks slightly to what you've written on the page. That is the calculator simplifying it. Okay, great work. I hope your have a go went well. Maybe you got all the way to the end. Maybe you got halfway through. Okay, it takes time. So we're just practice with this. All right, let's do one now that's got a negative somewhere in it. And I'm going to it right at the beginning. Okay, I want you to do exactly the same. We've seen it twice now. Just pause, have a go, and press play when you're ready. Okay, let's see how we got on. So A is going to equal -1 this time. B is going to equal 8, and C is going to equal 6. So I've got -8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times -1 times 6. Just extend that. And then I've got 2 times -1. So we're going to sort this out. I'm going to have -8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times -1 times 6. Those two negatives are going to create a positive. That is going to end up adding to the 64, which gives me root 88 divided by -2. Okay, so we'll split this. -8 plus root 88 divided by 2, and -8 minus root 88 divided by 2. And I'm just going to do my little resize so we can see it clearly. There we go. All right, so you need to get this in the calculator. So our -8 plus root 88 divided by 2 is going to give me the value x equals minus 0.69. And the second one, -8 minus root 88 divided by 2, is going to give me x equals 8.69. Okay, so I hope it's going well. Again, don't worry too much if it's going wrong. It does take a bit of practice. We'll do one more before I leave you to some of the questions I prepared at the end. So I'm really chucking the negatives at you on this one. So be prepared. So we've got -2x squared minus 8x minus 4. There you go. I told you every single one's negative. Pause, have a go, and then hit play when you're ready. Okay, so we're just taking our time. All right. I've got minus, and then B is -8. So I've got -8. Square root. Now, this is something to be really careful of. I want to do -8 squared. And if I don't do it like that in the calculator is going to produce me the wrong number. So there's lots of ways where the calculator actually doesn't help us. So we've got to be very, very careful there. And then I'm going to take away 4 times the A, which is -2, times the C, which is -4, all over 2 times -2. Okay, so the minus and the minus here at the very, very beginning is going to create a positive. So this is going to become just 8. So I'm going to have 8. Oh, I missed my plus and minus off there. Look, plus and minus, the root. Now, again, we've got to take our care. There's a lot of negatives here. So what I would be doing most likely is working that bit out first, working that bit out, and then taking away the 2 answers, just to try and reduce the chances of an error happening. You should have got 32 all over -4. I'm actually going to resize at this stage, and then we'll split. Okay, so I've got 8 plus root 32 divided by -4, and I've got 8 minus root 32 divided by -4. So x equals, for this first one, once we get that in the calculator, we've got -3.41, and x is equal to -0.59 on that one. And if you got that right, really, really well done. There's you just couldn't have any more negatives, really, could you? So break it down wherever possible. Remember, use the fraction key if you're getting errors at that final stage, because that will just do it for you and you don't have to think too hard. And be really mindful of this here. When your B is negative, you really need to remember brackets here. If you're not putting the brackets in, the calculator will actually tell you that the answer is -64 instead of +64. It will also mean that you end up with a negative inside your root, and then the calculator is just going to put error on the screen because it can't square root a negative number. Okay, so those are all the examples. These are your questions. So I've given you lots to practice. You may decide that you need a little break before you start this, which is absolutely fine. Remember, this is your course to be done at your pace. And if you just feel, okay, I've done quite a lot with the recap work and with taking all these notes and doing all these examples, I could probably do with a break before I do this. Or it might be that you think, no, I'm going to do 2 and 3, just get really secure on my steps. And then I'll come back and I'll do the rest, you know, the next day or when it works for you. It's not you must do all 8 questions right now. So make sure you're doing things in the right order for you. So obviously, I'm just going to bring those answers up, and then you can rewind and play between the questions and the answers. I'm just going to get rid of myself so that we've got plenty of space for the answers. And then I'll just see you next session when you're ready to do the next bit of learning that we've got planned.